Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection with me, Philippa Robinson.
And me, Robbie Lee. This is where we share our stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life. So, Philippa, what are we talking about today?
Well, today I wanted to talk about ordinary and living an ordinary life, which,
Ah.
please don't switch off if you're listening to this and think this is going to be really boring. It, yeah, it's been coming up for me a lot lately. Ordinary as opposed to extraordinary. And it really felt like something that I thought we would have a great conversation about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because when you first say ordinary life, there's a part of me that just breathes and relaxes. And it's like, yeah. And there's another part of me that goes, what do you mean? What do you mean ordinary? It's like we're not allowed to be that. Right? Like there's always something else we're supposed to be striving for, something big and extraordinary. And
Yeah. And I think, that's the point that I wanted to, that made me want to talk about this subject. Because I think all the years that are well documented in my story of like feeling less than and feeling broken, what I found in the last 6 years is like the joy of just having an ordinary day and just doing the things that I need to do. Some days there's more rushing around than others, but just being an ordinary day. And because I'm able to be much more present in what is going on each day rather than either one foot in the past being triggered with all my childhood trauma, one foot within anxiously in the future thinking, oh my God, what's going to come. I'm much more able to be here and you know not worry too much about what's coming and not being triggered too much about what is in the past. And also it's all a work in progress, but because I'm much more able to be here, I can have those moments of joy and like I always use this, a really nice good cup of coffee, and just take that
oh,
moment and take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to drink it and sit in my garden, my teeny tiny city garden, but listen to the birds or the wind rustling in the in my big palm tree that's in the garden. Or another thing I've got is at my window, I've got a little crystal hanging from the curtain rail, and about 4 p.m. at the moment the sun hits it and it casts little rainbows all over my wall and all over my lap. No, if I'm working here, it casts little rainbows everywhere, and it's just like, oh wow, here they are, these little glimmers of something really really cool actually. And that happens every afternoon.
hmm.
And it that is for me where a lot of joy comes these days. And I think that's quite ordinary. And is what that is the reason why I wanted to talk about ordinary. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's really beautiful because what I'm hearing is really relishing the moments that are here for us right now, not trying to make them into something they're not living in the past, not, hurrying toward the future, but really like, I mean, I was with you in my mind when you were talking about the cup of coffee, right? And sitting
Mm,
outside and listening to the birds and hearing the trees. Like those are some of my favorite parts of the day when I'm just being with whatever is there and
yeah.
savoring it, you know? And it also makes me think about comparison, which we talked about in episode, I'm looking down my notes, 13. Um,
Well done. Well done.
thanks. Uh, because I feel like what can happen is we can be enjoying our ordinary lives, the ordinary moments in our ordinary lives.
Yeah.
And then we hear that someone else has done something we would deem extraordinary. And suddenly our own internal chatter can then take us out of this ordinary, delicious moment and think, oh no, that we're not as extraordinary as that. There's something wrong here. And uh, those ordinary moments are so magical. Like I'm sitting here again. I'm with you in the cup of coffee, and it's just like it's yes,
Yeah.
fitting. With the, I'm like, there's it. There are so many moments throughout the day that are just ordinary. Drinking a cup of coffee, nothing special about that. Sitting outside, nothing special about that. And yet, seeing the light hit something in your office, it's that they really have the seed of the really magical things, honestly.
Yeah. And that's exactly the point that I wanted to talk about, because certainly up until about 6 years ago, I would not have seen those. I
Yeah.
would have been too busy doing all the things, pleasing everybody,
Yeah.
working, buzzing around, doing this for everybody else, working really hard. Just also very much keeping busy because I didn't want to stop, because if I stopped, then the feelings come up, and
Yeah.
my busyness was my way of keeping my feelings down. Just have no time where they
Mhm.
can come up.
Yeah.
So being able, I've worked through those feelings, and a lot of them to varying degrees, and being able to slow down has really, sorry, I'm gonna have to have a little sip of water.
Take your water.
So being able to slow down has enabled me to now have those moments, to appreciate those moments, to witness them,
Mm.
and then to see the joy in them. And I'm really glad that you tied it back to the comparison episode that we talked about uh, in episode 13, because you're absolutely right that we can be in those moments of enjoying those beautiful little ordinary moments, and then we can go on our phone, we can see what somebody else is posting um on social media, and we can all of a sudden feel that our ordinary moment is kind of nothing in comparison to what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And as we said in that episode, on social media, we're seeing people's best moments, even if they're real. That is their best moment. People don't tend to post ordinary moments, don't tend to post bad moments. So, it, you know, and also I do feel there has been this movement over the last few years towards everything has to be extraordinary, and if it's not extraordinary, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And I absolutely would beg to differ. And that's really where this desire to talk about ordinary came from, because what
Yeah.
is so wrong with ordinary? And
Absolutely.
ordinary can be beautiful, can be full of joy, can be nurturing, can be nourishing, can be, it might not be Instagrammable, it might not be something you want to share with all your, I don't know, followers and friends or whatever. Look at me, I'm having a cup of coffee in my garden, big deal. But there in that moment, and you've got this lovely cup of coffee that you've taken time to make for yourself, it smells divine, and you've got all the sights and smells and sounds and everything going on around you. It's everything else, it's all those things put together that makes it really special.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I completely agree. Yeah. And as you were talking, two words kind of were bubbling up for me. One was mindfulness, because what I'm
Mm,
hearing is, is you talk about like being here now with what is and really taking it in, like really allowing yourself to be with it, all the sounds and the feelings and the tastes and the smells and all of it, really being with it. And then I was also thinking about the things that make my life wonderful, joyful, the things that light me up, really align with my values, right? When
mm,
what I mean by that is like I value time in nature. I value
mm.
the wonderful conversation, meaningful conversations, which is what I get to do with you all the time.
Yeah,
I've so thinking about again, like those things that light you up, and someone else is going to have a different definition for things that really get them excited in the world or full of joy. And so, again, it doesn't make sense to be looking at what anyone else is doing. I'm talking about comparison again. But also, I'm thinking about you could look at someone's life who seems extraordinary. They've done an extraordinary thing and they might be miserable. And for me, I want to have joy in my life. I want to have ease in my life. I value those things a lot. you know,
yeah.
I I value deep connection with people. And and so maybe I haven't climbed Mount Everest, which I absolutely have not. And I think it's a phenomenal feat, for example, that someone could do. But just because I haven't done that doesn't take away from my little magical walks in the forest that I've had, where my cats and my dog join me as we walk around on our little path. It brings me so much joy to have my two little cats scampering about, going on a freaking walk with me. Like it just brings me joy, right? But it's an ordinary
Oh,
moment,
that's
but
amazing.
it's
That's
joyful.
yeah, that's like
Yeah.
my heart is filling with the idea of you wandering around in your forest with your dog and your cats. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just beautiful. Yeah, and it's really interesting when you what you were saying there really reminded me of a comment I had about my book. If you don't mind me mentioning this, if anybody doesn't
Please
know,
mention all the
but
time, all the time.
anybody doesn't know, I wrote a book, and the book is kind of like my my story up till about probably 3 years ago, and somebody I've had lots of great comments about it. It's been lovely, and people have really seen themselves in my story, and it is the story of sort of like down in the depths of sort of some of the things that happened to me. But also somebody read it and said to me, "Wow, what an interesting life you've had." And I was like, "What?" I really, and they said, "Oh yeah, you've been here and you've done this and you've done that." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that feedback." And it's somebody actually who knows me really well. They're quite a lot older than me, but they know me quite well. They've been around in my life for a long time. And they didn't know about all these things because I'm not that close. They just sort of have known me for a long time. And that was really strange that that's what they took away from it. And I can't remember really why it just really reminded me that you can take different things. Different people will take different things away from the same moment, the same experience, reading the same book. And that is really down to each one of us to take our own experience from something, and if that brings us joy, and if you know in the ordinary moments, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. That is what matters. And just because we're not living a so-called extraordinary life all day, every day, or even every day, even a little bit every day or every week, just because our life seems ordinary does not mean that it's not a beautiful, wonderful life.
Yes. 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 That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's
And
exactly
that's
right.
what I really feel. Um, I'm not anti-social media at all. And, you know, I've met some wonderful people through, you know, social media. And, but also there is now an instant comparison place to go and look. And if you want to find evidence that your life is not as extraordinary as somebody else's, you will absolutely find it. So don't go looking, you know, look inward at what you feel about your life, and where are the little pockets of joy, and where are those seemingly ordinary moments that make your day that little bit better. And they're usually free. They usually are, you know. My cup of coffee in my garden, you know, oh, okay, I had to buy the coffee and buy the coffee machine and make it, but you know, on the whole, it's not an expensive thing. Yes, I had to buy my little crystal, which is hanging at my window, but that didn't cost very much. You know, you know, you walking around your forest with your you know, your cats and your dog. I mean, those are, and they are very meaningful to you. They might not be meaningful to other, you know, me going for a walk with my cats, I haven't got cats, and a dog might not be quite so meaningful to me. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but might not be quite so meaningful to me, but it is to you, and that is what matters.
That's
I'm really
exactly right.
I'm really passionate about this, that actually, you know, we don't compare and we don't look at what other people are doing, and we look inwards and feel what is right for us. And as HSPs, you know, we have that in us. I mean, most people have it in us, but we have it strongly in us if we take the time to tune into it.
Yes. I love seeing you get all fired up about it. Yes, like you, it's you're passionate about it,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And yes, because it is about tuning in, and like you said, something I'm doing might not register for you, and that's to me where the value piece comes in, right? It's just
mm,
like, what are the things that you value, and taking the time to notice,
yeah.
I think, is so key. I I remember when I was back in my corporate job and working just a lot of hours and not taking care of myself at all. I was not taking care of myself, which had a major consequence later. But I remember, like, people on the Friday, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And always, like, after a while, I was just, I didn't even want to tell people, because what am I doing this weekend? I'm crashing in my room. I'm sleeping as much as I can. Maybe I'm reading a book. Maybe I'm sitting outside. It was all but just really, like, rest
Yeah.
oriented, and recharge. It's just like, how can I bring my energy back so I can go again next week? And people are like, oh, we're going to the concerts, we're going out with friends, we're going out to do it. And I was just like, ugh. And I started feeling like, not that there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but that's not what, I was valuing then. And, but I started to feel, oh, I don't even tell, but people are going to think I'm boring. People are going to
Mm,
think I don't have a life, right? It was all of that, when honestly, those were the things that I needed to be doing a lot more of, because my body was so in need of rest
yeah.
and recharging. So I think I thought of that because of what you were saying about, as HSPs, checking in with ourselves, right? It's like, and what are the things we need and what are the things we love? Like, we know what are the things that bring us joy. And many of them, as you mentioned, are free or very inexpensive, because we're so good at seeing the beauty around us,
Yeah.
getting excited about I use the magic as my word, like, just how magical things can be. And the how magical the ordinary things can be.
Yeah.
Watching a squirrel jump around the trees on his squirrel highway brings me so much joy.
exactly.
Costs me nothing. Squirrel vision is just a hoot for me, you know,
Squirrel vision, love
and
it.
ordinary,
Yeah,
but extraordinary because I'm noticing it. It feels good for me, and it brings me joy, which is one of the things I really, really value.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it brings us back to it keeps us in the moment, and it
In the
brings us
moment.
back into our body as well, because we can
Yeah, oh, yeah.
we have a physical reaction to it. Usually there's like, if we can tune into it, there's something like going on inside. Like when I see my little rainbows, I'm like, whoop. You know, that's going on inside.
Yeah.
And when I'm sitting there with my cup of coffee and the birds are tweeting and stuff, and the wind's blowing in the tree, I'm sort of like going, and listening to it and just taking it all in. And when you're on your walk with your animals, like, the Pied Piper of your woods, like with all the animals following you and stuff, it's I'm sure there is, that moment of like, oh yeah, here I am with you know with my animals, with my pack.
With my back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're the leader. Yeah. And I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here, but I was having a conversation with my husband at the weekend. He was saying how he's tired all the time. And I was saying to him, so, what's that telling you? What is, because he was saying, oh, do you remember the days on a Friday, when I'd come home from work and it'd be like, oh yeah, great, it's the weekend and all the plans for the weekend. He said, now I come home on a Friday and it's like, oh, and I said, and I just said to him, so what information is that giving you? And we finally came round to the, well, maybe work's taking more out of you than it used to do. And why is that? As your role changed, as this, what, and what, we didn't have a real deep and meaningful about it, but it was quite interesting because he hadn't thought to
Yeah.
actually feel into what that is about. He just was like, well, it just is what it is. And it is what it is. You're absolutely right. But equally, there needs to be some leftover work. We can't give our all to work and have nothing left over.
Well, we
As,
can, but there are consequences.
yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And certainly, as we age, you know, who doesn't want to be having a life away from work, more so. I mean, it's not about aging, but it brings it into focus, or it certainly brings it into focus for me anyway, that work is work, and there definitely has to be, I mean, if I can enjoy work, great, but there also has to be other things that, and like you, and I think that ties into values, which is what you said earlier. And these meaningful conversations that I get to have with you are like just so wonderful. They really are. And we get to air them so other people get to listen to them. This is a place for us to have found our voices and to hopefully have conversations that other people, the listeners, will resonate with. And I was only thinking about values today, and realness and truth and all those things really matter to me. So I suppose that's tied up with authenticity, although uh, that like all great words, they get overused at times, don't they? But I like to think that I bring the real me, I bring the authentic me to these conversations with you, like you do. And because we get on so well and we bring that's what makes these conversations really work for us.
I totally agree. I think these conversations are an example of ordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, right? Two women
Mm,
talking. That's what's happening here, right? On the surface, an ordinary thing. And yet, because of the fact that we are our real selves, as you mentioned, because we're vulnerable, because we have such a phenomenal connection,
yeah.
because we love what we're talking about so deeply. All of those things make it a really rich experience for us.
Yeah.
And we've heard for other people as well.
Yeah.
And really but again, like on the surface, it's an ordinary task. You know what I mean?
Yes. And we're talking about quite ordinary things in a way. I mean, we're talking about quite deep things, but they're not,
Yeah.
you know, they're not rocket science, are they? You
No,
know?
no.
um, but they are meaningful to us. So they are
Yeah.
ordinary, but they tie in with our values, and we get great connection out of them and all sorts. So it ticks so many boxes, but also they are ordinary, which ties in with today's, topic. And I feel they're really important.
Hmm. That's why we're talking about them, because they're
Yeah.
important to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which goes back to the point you were making earlier around looking inward and what is it that's meaningful to us, right? And we find great meaning in what, or else we wouldn't be having these conversations. We wouldn't spend our time on them. I
No.
can't stand fluffy talk or small talk. Like, oh my god, like it physically. I get physical pains in my body when I have to do that for a prolonged period of time. I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't want to be here. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But that's not what we do here at all.
No. And and that's a real HS part of being an
Yeah.
HSP as well. We love deep, meaningful conversations, and the
Yes.
surface level chit chat is really quite hard. So,
Yeah.
if you're out there feeling that, and you know what we mean, then, it really is part of the HSP trait. And I think I can do chit chat, but I don't enjoy it. So I can probably make it look like I'm doing quite a good, giving it a good go. You put me in a room full of people I don't know, and I may well look like I'm doing okay in that situation, but underneath I'm like desperately trying to find the one person I can have a really great conversation with. And I often get stuck with somebody who wants to talk about sport or something. I remember quite a few like corporate events, and it was like, oh gosh, this is just so dreadful. I wouldn't do it now. I'd definitely move on now. Hindsight's a great
Same.
thing.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, find more of what brings you joy, and find more of the ordinary, and don't worry what it looks like when you look outside. Look inward. What does it feel like? What feels right? What feels good? um feel the joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it, really. I think that's it
Think we nailed it.
I think that's it in a nutshell, don't you? Think we nailed it. I like it. I like it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've not got
I
anything else to add, have you?
I don't. I would love to hear from people, what are some ordinary moments that
Mm,
really just stand out for them? I'd love to celebrate other people's ordinary moments.
yeah, I
Because
agree.
hearing what other people what feeds them, right? What brings them joy, what feels really yummy. Like it can it helps the rest of us to maybe to notice something we hadn't noticed before, or just to share in someone else's joy. I love that.
It does. And I also think if you do share it, and this is what brings me joy, it sort of it puts it out there, so that I don't know, it's almost more tangible, more, yeah, this is what really brings me joy, and it almost gives you more joy in a way, you know
Yes.
so
Yeah.
yeah, please do
Joy
share.
in the sharing of it.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
So please do share with us. We would love to know what brings you those ordinary moments that bring you joy. And yeah, we could compile them. We might compile them and do something about that. We could write a blog post, or we could put them on LinkedIn or something. But we'll do something with them if we get a few. So please send us your ordinary moments that bring you joy. Yeah, I think
I
that's
love
it for
that.
today. Yeah, so it's bye from me.
And bye from me.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. It helps others find us. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes and any suggestions you have for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to Robbie Leigh, that's leigh.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to safeandsupported.co.uk. See you next time.